Hey, all you cool cats and kittens.
But if I felt like she stepped over the line one more time, I would break her face.
My name is Alexander Hamilton.
Dale.
Should we send out a search party for Dale? I don't know.
I am never gonna financially recover from this.
Believe it or not, that was all this year, you guys. And since we've been stuck inside, these TV moments have brought us together in moments of joy like never before. I'm joined by Crossan and Lauren Zima, and we're gonna talk about our top TV moments of 2020. And I know we've each have our own picks. So Ash, you wanna kick things off for us?
Yes, so my number 3 pick, I'm going with Love is Blind. So this came out February 13th, so we weren't quite in quarantine yet. This was the show I felt like shouldn't have worked, but it worked better than almost any other like dating reality show. We had Lauren and Cameron, who are now happily married for 2 years. We have Amber and Burnett, also happily married for 2 years. Giannina and Damien still together. And then we have Mark and Jessica, not together, but gave us some of the best moments of reality TV of the year, possibly of the decade.
Her feeding her dog wine will go down in reality TV history.
100%. We got viral moments. And what blew my mind about Love is Blind is it was one of those shows that really benefited from the quarantine, right? It hit right at that time, as you said, when we were all at home. So people were totally glued to their TVs. I don't think it would have been as big of a success without that quarantine boost when everybody was just streaming and looking for things to binge. And it was crazy too, because then we had to analyze and figure out, like, when was this actually filmed? Are these people together? They had been so good about not posting anything on their social media. It was almost like a next part of the show to figure out, wait, who's with who and when did this all actually happen and how did it work?
I mean, everybody, Mark and Jessica, her complaining about her age all the time and not really giving him a chance. Giannina, who was, she was a little cuckoo.
She belonged on reality television.
Exactly. And then Lauren and Cameron, where it's like, I don't think these two would have ever crossed paths anywhere else except this show. And then they completely fell in love. And it surprised them too. I was here for it.
Love is Blind. Denny, what's your number 3 pick?
Okay, mine is the Real Housewives franchise. We had multiple franchises this year, right, Lauren? And I am going to admit, I am late to the Housewives party. I just hopped on the train. I hopped on the bandwagon. Quarantine, I was like, let's see what all the fuss is about. But I did it right. I actually educated myself on past seasons of Beverly Hills and Potomac before the new seasons aired this year. And now I am hooked. I mean, won't get into the gritty details, but like the plot points this year included Brandi Glanville dropping a major bombshell that she hooked up with Denise Richards. She claims that. Tensions between Candace and Monique in Potomac hit a fever pitch, which led to this altercation during wine tasting.
A physical altercation.
I mean, you are a huge fan of the Housewives franchise, Lauren. Don't you feel they're at their peak right now?
Totally. And I think, peak. Okay, here's what I will say. I love that the quarantine not only gave us some stuff that like got the spotlight on it if we hadn't all been glued to our TVs, but it also meant that people got into shows they hadn't gotten into before. Just like you, the quarantine silver lining, Denny Directo started watching Housewives. I can finally talk to you about it. Yes. And so I think shows got new fans. But yeah, Housewives, here's the thing. We had tons of crazy moments this year on different franchises. And we also had to see the Housewives endure the pandemic because our reality shows were filming when all this was happening, right? So right now we're watching The Real Housewives of Orange County, what they filmed a couple months ago, like dealing with COVID, and we're watching it. And so it's just making for wild reality TV. Plus, we got a new franchise for the first time in years, The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, which I am saying here and now gave us the best premiere of any TV show in the Bravo Network's history.
Denny, you said you started late. I just started my first Real Housewives watch. I'm starting with Beverly Hills because I was a Vanderpump Rules fan. I have just finished season 3, but that is all the Housewives I've ever watched, and I'm obsessed.
I'm feeling so grateful right now. Thank you.
I know.
This is wonderful.
Thank you, Lauren. You've been trying to tell us, but it's pure entertainment, and that's what we need this year. And also, it's a little bit of escapism. And on that note, Lauren, what was your pick for one of your favorite TV shows this year?
I don't know if there could have been something more literally escapist. My number 3 pick is Netflix's Emily in Paris, or should I say Emily in Paris, or should I say Emily en Paris? So literally, it took us there. The show starred Lily Collins as its main character, Emily, an American who finds herself working a job in Paris. And it gave us a lot of, I will say, low-hanging fruit of humor, like, oh, the American in Paris acting like an idiotic American and doing some not-so-cultural things, including her fashion in the beginning. But the reason I got so obsessed with it was an easy watch. It's from Sex and the City creator Darren Star, and it was just fashionable romantic escapism. Plus, it had literally been filmed in Paris. So at a time when we could not travel, I was taken abroad.
Because you know what? Let's be real. Isn't the most creative show or well-written show, isn't that good? Questionable at best, but the fashion, the fact that it is shot in Paris, and you do get kind of swept away with the kind of outlandish parts of it, you know, in a time like you mentioned, Lauren, where we're just like stuck at home and dealing with harsh realities. It was kind of nice to go on a trip to Paris.
Okay, my number 2 pick is the return of the Mandalorian. We needed Baby Yoda to save us in 2020, and boy, did he. Listen, this show was a little bit formulaic in the last season, but this new season has just opened the floodgates of Star Wars into my soul. It's just everything I could have ever wanted. Like, I never thought this.
Your veins.
This show has consistently proved me wrong on things that I think about Star Wars. I'm like, oh, I never want a live action Star Wars. It'll never be done that great. This show is fantastic. I'm like, I never want to learn Baby Yoda's name because it can't be as good as Baby Yoda. I was mistaken. Grogu is adorable. I never want to see live action Ahsoka. Rosario Dawson comes in with her two dual white lightsabers and just slays it. It is a fantastic show, and the future is just brighter than ever for Star Wars television.
On that note, my number 2 pick is a reality competition series that has existed for a minute now, but still delivered in its prime 12 seasons later. And I'm talking about RuPaul's Drag Race. I mean, you guys know I'm a hardcore fan of this show. But I feel like this past year, we not only did we get season 12 of RuPaul's Drag Race, we also got All Stars 5. And it's just the amount of talent on this show. It's getting harder and harder to compete because it really is anybody's game at this point. I mean, season 12, I couldn't predict the winner. It went to Jada Essence Hall, and our All-Stars 5 winner was Shea Coulee, 2 black queens who really delivered on all cylinders. I mean, they were like personality, so creative. They could sew, they could lip sync for their lives. But what was interesting with season 12 in particular, you guys, was to see it finish during the pandemic, because the show is pre-taped up until the finale. So the top 3 had to compete for the crown via Zoom at home. And so to watch that play out was so fascinating. And like Drag Race always has, it's just, it's amazing to watch these queer people who are part of these marginalized communities, some of them in the middle of nowhere, really become Drag Race superstars, whether they won or not. And also just to see all that creativity, and they had to do so much on that show to win. I mean, there's no wonder it won another Emmy.
Denny, RuPaul is to me as Housewives was to you, and because you started watching Housewives, I'm gonna. It's not because I don't think I'll like it. I'm just like, do I have any more space in my TV brain? And I know there's so much history and lore with RuPaul's Drag Race that I need to like catch up. But you did it with Housewives. I'm gonna dive in.
You can dive in the next season. You don't have to go back and watch previous seasons unless you're watching All Stars. But season 13, get right into it. Just like I got into The Bachelorette not too long ago, Lauren.
You really jumped in on all my shows this year, and I appreciate that. I do. I know Ashley watches Bachelorette a little bit too. Ash is watching
Guys, The Mandalorian is only 2 seasons if you guys want to jump in.
I do. I should watch that too, actually. I should watch that too. No, for real.
So you want to talk about a show trying to figure out how to keep going in the pandemic. I have to say The Bachelorette was on the forefront. Their season, for the first time in the franchise's almost 20-year history, production was literally put on halt as they were about to film night one, the limo entrances. That was that March 13th week where pretty much everything shut down for all of us. They put things on hold for a while, and then they were one of the first big shows to get going again in the pandemic. So they took the whole cast and crew, again, for the first time ever, to a quarantine bubble at the La Quinta Resort in Palm Springs, California, and filmed it there. And the reason that it is my number 2 pick is twofold. One, and by the way, both of these things I think are a result, in part, of everything I just said. We had our girl Claire Crawley, the Bachelorette. She's sitting at home waiting for months. She's got the chance to look up her guys on the internet. No lead has ever had this opportunity in this downtime before. And when Claire arrives at the La Quinta, Palm Springs, she says something no lead has ever said before. After her night one limo entrances, she says of Dale Moss, and I quote, "I think I just met my husband."
Ooh! Game over. Game over.
They end up having one huge moment. This is my top 2 pick. They end up having the shortest route to an engagement in show history, which means production then has to bring in a second lead, Miss Tayshia Adams, making this the first time ever we've replaced a lead midway through a season. So I think the pandemic was in part the reason all this happened, and it just made for, I mean, you talk about like the show's been on for 20 years. There are some seasons that just stick out. And this season is going to go down in history. I feel like no matter who you are, or where you were, whether you watched the show or not, you knew what was going on with The Bachelorette this season.
I actually watched it, and I never watched The Bachelorette, but I was like, this has been so hyped up. It seems so interesting. What is going on with this woman? Because of course I watch Roses and Rosé. That's usually how I get on my Bachelor info. Right. But I watched it because I was like, how many times is she going to say Dale? And I played a little drinking game, and I died. Now I'm a ghost.
Now you're a ghost. Now you're a ghost.
We have we need to do a montage of her Dale. Like, just put it in here.
Dale plus Claire, Dale plus Claire, Dale.
I feel like because of the shutdown, production shutting down because of the pandemic, I felt like it took longer to get to the show than it did for her to fall in love with one of the contestants. But I will say, when you take that away, the pandemic, the fact that Claire was replaced by Tayshia, as I continue to watch the show, I realize that this is also a crop and a batch of guys I feel like I've never seen on this franchise. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're living in such a vulnerable time. And they had to jump through so many hoops to get to the show, only for Claire to peace out with Dale. And now they're in it. I mean, this was a test of their commitment. And now they are really fighting and vying for Tayshia's heart by opening up theirs. There's been some emotional episodes. And I feel like the guys are the driving force of this season too.
Okay. I really don't have much to add to this beyond the fact that it was just like a cultural reset of the year. But in July, they dropped Hamilton on Disney Plus, and the world turned upside down. I mean, I was nonstop playing that soundtrack, and I still am. And guys, I need to embarrass myself really quick because the Spotify Wrapped playlists came out where they tell you like what you listen to all year. And I was in the top 4% of people that listened to the Hamilton soundtrack. And then they showed me my top artists. And it was
it's Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Hamilton, Lin-Manuel Miranda, Leslie Odom Jr., and Tony Tibbs. It was the whole cast of Hamilton. Not a single non-Hamilton moment on my top artist. That is humiliating, but I'm also simultaneously very proud of it.
Can we blame you? And you're talking to two theater nerds right here, Lauren and I. I support this 100%, especially when, again, because of the pandemic, all theater production shut down. Hamilton was actually here in LA right when the shutdown happened. So I think a handful of people probably got to see it, but now the whole world got to see it because of Disney Plus. That was appointment viewing for me.
You know, Hamilton for years was that coveted theater ticket. Like, you could not get it in New York, and then it was maybe in a couple other big cities. And I think for most of the country, you were hearing about it, but you weren't actually able to see it. So streaming, and again, kind of like the reset that we've had of, wait, what can we achieve online through streaming, through Zoom, because of being quarantined? I think hopefully it brings more theater to more people.
And I know I didn't listen to the soundtrack for years because I was like, I want to see the show first and I want to see it in context. I just don't want to listen to the music first. So I never even listened to the soundtrack. And I hope they do this with more stuff. Put Mamma Mia on Disney Plus, please.
Let's not forget that this was also a treat for people who did get a chance to see Hamilton live, because let's be real, it's a hot ticket that also is very expensive. So for those people in the nosebleeds, they finally got to see it up close. So congratulations to all
Jonathan
of us.
Groff.
Right.
I saw it at the Pantages in LA a couple years ago, and I felt like I needed to rewatch it just because they go so fast. I'm like, I only got one shot to understand the lyrics, and I didn't get them all. I need to.
It took me like 5 times to understand what happened in Hamilton, and now I'm like one of those people. Like I watched it with my mom, and I was like, so now he's talking about rebuilding the financial, like the treasury, and my mom's like, shut up, like stop talking.
We got entertainment and a history lesson. I'm here for it. Well, from Tony winners to Emmy winners, because my number one favorite TV series of the year is Schitts Creek. I mean, what is not to love about this show? The first thing that comes to mind for me, actually, is that I watched it early on when it first premiered, because I'm a huge Catherine O'Hara fan, and Eugene Levy, too. Like, I love all those Christopher Guest movies. But the journey this show has had, from this Canadian show on Pop TV for us here in America, to this, like, Emmy juggernaut, is insane. And also, not to mention the fact that, obviously we've seen a lot more diversity on TV this year, certainly a lot more LGBTQ plus visibility. But this show it lives in this perfect bubble where it's, queer, but also has had this considerable mainstream success, and everyone loves it, and I think we have Netflix to thank for that. But it came to a perfect close this year and subsequently swept the comedy categories in the Emmys, and I think it is so well deserving. I know you guys love the show too.
You want to talk about a show that got a life because of the quarantine and from being available on streaming. I had heard about Schitt's Creek like being in the industry. I think people in media have always loved Schitt's Creek, but all of a sudden, friends of mine from college and neighbors were like, "Are you watching Schitt's Creek?" And it really made me happy to see that this show could have mainstream appeal like this. Not just mainstream appeal, but critical appeal, and just be something sort of beloved across the board, because at the center of it, it is like a story about a family still, and I think we all got that perspective this year too.
And it's actually funny.
Yes.
It's so funny. And I think the previous year at the Emmys, I think it only got like 1 nomination. So then to see it like get its due and completely sweep in its final season was so beautiful. And I think it was like season 4 or something that Mariah Carey tweeted about Schitt's Creek and was like, I love this show. And I think that's like when it started to blow up.
Okay, Lauren, what was your number one pick for your favorite TV show of 2020?
I think the only way to introduce it is to say, Carole Baskin, Gilder husband. I don't remember the TikTok dance. Allegedly, I'm just quoting the TikTok dance. Right. Tiger King, you guys. We've been talking about shows benefiting from the quarantine, hitting right at the right time. This show is not my number one pick because it undoubtedly was the show of quarantining and staying at home. Tiger King, the docu-series, dropped on Netflix right when we all were staying inside our houses with our families, wanting something to watch, and it absolutely blew up in terms of numbers of streams. The story of Joe Exotic and his animal park and his arch rival Carole Baskin, and how he wound up in jail for allegedly being part of a plot to kill her. It was wild. It became memes. It became TikTok dances. It became merchandise and t-shirts. And Halloween, Kim Kardashian dressed up as Carole Baskin and made her kids tigers. Carole Baskin wound up on Dancing with the Stars, where she addressed a lot of the controversy. So I don't know if there was something that more so embodies like the cultural moment we're having. Years from now, we will all remember Tiger King.
No, I think you're so right. I think this is like love it or hate it. Because I think like we've all gone through a personal journey with Tiger King where we were really into it. And then I was really not into it. And I was like, why are you still talking about Tiger King? But it was just like this moment. We all watched it at the same time. I've never seen anything like that.
That show actually really did hit Netflix right when the stay-at-home orders were being put in place, you know? And what else were we doing, right? Except like we needed some stuff to watch. But just to see the cultural impact, like you explained, Lauren, and like the fact that Carole Baskin, besides being on Dancing with the Stars, was also like name checked in a Megan Thee Stallion song, body yada yada yada. Like that tells you how much this show really, I don't know, influenced a bunch of people. And not to mention the fact like we're forgetting that it really did introduce us to this character of Carole Baskin and reopen that case about the mysterious disappearance of her husband, which feels like needs to be like the Tiger King docuseries sequel. I don't know, but I think you're right. I think this show will definitely be reflective of this insane and mad 2020.
Totally.
Oh my God, and her family like took out that ad during her Dancing with the Stars. Oh my God, the mess. I thought we were never gonna see Carole Baskin again after that show because she was like devastated. And then I think she like took some time to grieve and then was like, you know what? I'm gonna have my moment. I'm gonna go on Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah. Respect.
You know, I interviewed her about it. I said, Carole, how did you choose Dancing with the Stars? Because I did ET's Dancing with the Stars interviews this year. And she said, you know, I got probably 150 media requests in like the week following Tiger King. And you know, the biggest outlets, we tried to get an interview with her then. She only accidentally did Jimmy Fallon, she thought, I think she got kind of pranked into thinking she was doing Jimmy Fallon and she wasn't. And then she decided to do Dancing with the Stars only because she said her daughter is such a fan of the show and her daughter was like, Mom, if you're going to do one thing, please do Dancing with the Stars. I think part of the reason we were also so captivated by Tiger King was because it was such a discussion type of show, you know? There was no clear hero or villain. As you watched each episode, you wondered, wait, who's done more wrong here and who is really in the right here? And we were all still talking about it and wondering what really happened to Carole Baskin's husband. We still are now. We don't know what the future holds. I hope we solve it one day.
And just like Joe Exotic, that series had so many layers to it. And every time you peeled something back, it just got wilder and wilder and wilder. But
let me ask you guys this. Do you think that without quarantining, would Tiger King have been a hit? Ash?
I think a very short-lived weekend-long hit. I don't think it would have been everyone trying to get interviews, like a month of talking about it. I don't think any of like the cultural impact of it would have happened.
I'm going to say yes. I think it would have because of pure word of mouth. Like it really was a really fascinating and wild docuseries that I said, played just the way it unfolded and all the different things that were being thrown into the mix. I feel like people would have definitely hopped on the bandwagon because as we've seen and learned, we couldn't shut up about it. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
It also hit right at that time of, I don't know. I agree with you, Ash. I don't think it would have been as big. I think it would have been like maybe a slower burn word of mouth. But it also was like TikTok got big right at that time. And then we had the TikTok dance. It was this perfect storm, just like the story of Tiger King itself is this crazy perfect storm that creates a story unlike anything you've heard or could possibly even believe. And isn't that 2020?